Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on the Spanish tragedy, and we get to hear from someone other than Hieronymo today. We get to hear from the Portuguese ambassador in Act 3, Scene 12. And at the beginning of this scene, we had Hieronymo, who is still very much grieving over the loss of his son. He wants revenge, but he's at that point where he might also be okay with killing himself. He came in with a dagger and a rope, one in each hand, and he was like, should I just go ahead and do it now? But then he's like, but if I do this now, then who's going to take revenge against Lorenzo and Balthazar for Horatio's death and all of that? So he goes through all of that, but then he sees that the Spanish king and the Portuguese ambassador and Lorenzo and like a train of people are coming in, and he's like, oh, I should see what's going on here. And they start to come in, and he goes as if he's going to approach the Spanish king to try to get justice for Horatio. And Lorenzo's like, back off. Can't you see that he's busy right now? And the king is saying to the Portuguese ambassador, he's like, did the viceroy get the documents that I sent him, the treaties that I sent? Because remember, he had sent the Portuguese ambassador back to Portugal with word that Balthazar was alive and being well treated, and actually they're going to have him marry Bella Imperia. So the Spanish king is checking up with the Portuguese ambassador to make sure that that message was delivered and see what the response was, while Hieronymo is trying to get in there and get the king's attention. Lorenzo's like, back off. So the king and the ambassador get to, have their chat. They're like, wait, what's going on here? And Hieronymo's like, nothing. And he takes a step back. So the Portuguese ambassador is able to answer the king by saying, renowned king, he hath received and read thy kingly proffers and thy promised league. And as a man extremely overjoyed to hear his son so princely entertained, whose death he had so solemnly bewailed, this for thy further satisfaction and kingly love he kindly lets thee know. First, for the marriage of his princely son with Bella Imperia, thy beloved niece, the news are more delightful to his soul than myrrh or incense to the offended heavens. In person, therefore, will he come himself to see the marriage rites solemnized, and, in the presence of the court of Spain, to knit a sure, inextricable band of kingly love and everlasting league betwixt the crowns of Spain and Portugal. There will he give his crown to Balthazar, and make a queen of Bella Imperia. So what he's saying is, yeah, the Viceroy of Portugal got your message, and it made him really, really happy. He's thrilled to find out that his son is still alive. He's totally on board with the let's marry Balthazar to Bella Imperia thing. This is the best news that he could have gotten, and it's such great news that he's going to come to witness the wedding himself. And then at some point back in Portugal, he wants Balthazar and Bella Imperia to come back to Portugal so that he can make Balthazar the king of Portugal and Bella Imperia the queen of Portugal, which will further unite Spain and Portugal in the aftermath of this war that happened. And the king's like, oh, that's fantastic news. Everything sounds great. This is cool that we're all on the same page for this stuff. And then the ambassador is like, and also one last thing, here is the ransom that is owed to Horatio for capturing Balthazar. And at hearing the name Horatio, Hieronymo, of course, is like, justice! I need justice for my son. This is justice for my son. He comes running forward, just screaming, justice, justice. And the other people there, like the king and the ambassador, don't necessarily know that Horatio is dead at this point. Like, obviously Lorenzo does, because he was there and he helped with the murder. But the others don't necessarily know why Hieronymo is behaving this way. He comes out and they're like, what are you talking about, Horatio, with your son? Like, what's the deal? And he's like, I'll dig him up and I'll pull up his bones so that you can give him what's owed to him and pay him his ransom. And they're like, we don't understand what's happening here. And finally they're able to get him to go away, just sort of with their own confusion and Lorenzo's urging. And Lorenzo's like, give him a little bit of a pass. He's stressed out. He's a little bit crazy over his son, and he wants to make sure that his son is getting what's owed to him. Of course, Lorenzo doesn't admit to having killed his son and being guilty of all of that thing, but the king's like, okay, let's make sure that let's give him the ransom that was owed to Horatio, give it to Hieronymo because obviously he needs it. And then, hey, let's start planning a wedding. So, and that's the end of Act 3, Scene 12. So it's sort of an interesting, we start with an almost suicide, and then we get I keep making these parallels between this and Hamlet, because Hamlet is so much about father and son relationships and grief and all of that. And, you know, Hamlet goes and Laertes throws himself into Ophelia's grave. That's sort of what this feels like a little bit, with Hieronymo just kind of hanging back to hear what's going on, and the name Horatio, he just springs out and starts digging in the ground to, you know, be reunited with his son and make sure that his son gets the ransom that's owed to him. And nobody understands quite where he's coming from or what he's all about, which is maybe also just a little sprinkling of Ophelia when she's doing her, you know, here's this for you and rue for you and some for me too, all of here's violets, blah, 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 all of that stuff. It feels to me a little bit like that's all crammed into this scene too. But this one was written before Hamlet was written, so maybe this was a first draft working out some of the kinks. That is, of course, supposing that Shakespeare had anything to do with the character of Hieronymo, which he may or may not have, because this was largely written by Thomas Kidd. But anyway, I can definitely see similarities in the Hamlet story and Hieronymo's dealing with his son's death. But yeah, things are still moving on the other side of stuff. Balthazar and Bellimperia have their parental go-ahead to get married. Bellimperia is maybe coming around to liking Balthazar, but we're not entirely sure on that one yet, so we'll see how that goes. It's like a little smattering of Romeo and Juliet thrown in there, with the parents arranging a marriage that the daughter might not be totally up for. But hey, this is neither Hamlet nor Romeo and Juliet. This is a Spanish tragedy, and in order to figure out how it all works out, you got to come back tomorrow for more. So I'll see you then. Mwah.